21 years ago, in the year 2000, mysterious towers appeared in capital cities around the world. The towers were built with a material that was unknown. It was said that the towers were inhabited by a transcendental being named Deus. Access to the towers had been restricted by the authorities, while various rumors around the towers have circulated. Following the appearance of the towers, mass outbreaks had occurred around the world. To fight against outbreaks, people who were chosen by Deus were awakened with inhuman powers. 21 years later, present day, in the year 2021, the world sees an era of prosperity for the awakened. On March 27, 2021, at 6:21 p.m., Do Hyuk was reborn as an awakened. The next morning, Do Hyuk wakes up and thinks about what had happened to him. He looks at his suit jacket hanging on the wall, and sees its tattered condition, and confirms that yesterday wasn't a dream. He begins to recall yesterday's events. After Do Hyuk defeats the giant goblin, he regains his own consciousness and finds himself standing in the middle of the parking lot and holding a sword. He is puzzled by his current situation. It appears that he was unaware of the time when the system took control of his body. He wonders why he is holding a sword. He remembers that he was about to be killed by the giant goblin and suddenly realizes the giant goblin may be standing behind him. He turns around to check and wonders where the giant goblin went. He notices a goblin club on the ground along with its system's appraisal stats. Looking at the sword he's holding, he asks himself if he had really become an awakened and defeated the monster. A young man and a woman quickly approach Do Hyuk to praise him. They are the two guild members, who had watched him defeat the giant goblin. They look at Do Hyuk with great admiration and praise him for his use of magic against the giant goblin. Do Hyuk was confused and did not understand what they meant, as he had no recollection of the battle. They tell him that his skills are unmatched among spellcasters, and that he does not need to be so polite with them. Do Hyuk pauses to respond, realizing that there were casualties. He asks them if they should not be attending to them first. The guild member tells him that it is not a big deal because they are normal occurrences at outbreak events. Do Hyuk was shocked at how they reacted and how they treated deaths so casually. The guild members continue to pester him and ask him if he could lead them since their guild master is dead, and tell him that he would be a great leader for them as they were weak. Do Hyuk looks at them with judgment and thinks about how the same people, who feared for their lives after their guild master was killed and who had abandoned him when he was an ordinary, are telling him that this is normal. He thinks that something was not right with them and with the situation, and tells them that he needs some time to think about it. However, they ignore his response and continue to beg him to join. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by someone ordering them to stop. Do Hyuk and the two guild members see that a woman and two men had approached them. The two guild members recognize them as representatives of the KMAA and are surprised at how quickly they arrived. KMAA is short for Korea Ministry of Awakened Affairs. It is an agency formed by the Korean government in response to the emergence of the awakened. In partnership with guilds, the agency exists to protect the country and to police the awakened. The female KMAA agent, whose name is Yunso Lee, explains that they arrived earlier than usual because they learned that a high-ranking monster had appeared there. She ordered the two awakened individuals to go with them, directing at the two guild members. Slightly confused, the two guild members turned around and saw that Do Hyuk had abandoned them and took off. As they run after him, Yunso Lee, the female KMAA agent, orders the male agents to capture and restrain the two guild members. One of the men asks if they should go after Do Hyuk. Yunso Lee bends over to pick up a briefcase lying on the ground. She tells them that there is no need because they will probably see him again soon. Suddenly, the alarm on a cell phone goes off. It is 7 a.m. Do Hyuk is still in his room sitting on his bed. He worries about what he is going to do because he did not meet with the client and close the deal. He thinks about how his boss will not believe him that he had failed because of an outbreak again. He tells himself that dwelling on the past won't do anything. He slaps himself in the face to help him pull himself together. Then, he wonders about his powers and thinks that he needs to understand them, as they will help him survive as an awakened. He vaguely remembers the notification that informed him about his abilities being related to some game. He pulls up his status window and begins to read the information. He sees that all his stats except for charm, physical and magic defense, are 5. He thought to himself why they looked familiar. He then notices that his awakened class is Wizard, Mechanic, and Alchemist, when suddenly he remembers that they are the same classes as his first character he played in DNF. He had heard that awakened individuals with dual classes are extremely rare and that they are very well paid. However, he realizes that he is a triple awakened and begins to wonder about the prospects. With the news, he became very happy and screamed very loudly in excitement, to which he disturbed his neighbor. Do-hyuk begins to think about his plans as an awakened. He thinks it would be dangerous to fight in dungeons right away and thinks about how the mortality rate of newly awakened individuals is high. He decides that he will first need to build up his skills. He then wonders how he can make money in the meantime without taking any risks. He pours himself a glass of water and continues to think about a way to make money that does not involve fighting monsters. He ponders over the idea while drinking from his cup when suddenly, he remembers about a mechanic class skill. He pulls up his status window and confirms that he has the Replication LV Max spell. Replication LV Max is a special spell that allows the user to create a perfect replica of a finished product. However, the same item cannot be replicated twice, and a replica cannot be replicated. In addition, the spell does not work on items that have been created by the user. Do-hyuk wants to try this spell immediately and decides to first test it on the glass cup he had just used. He holds out the cup and says the spell incantation. A flash of blue light envelops the cup in his hand, and a 3-dimensional grid appears before him. An object resembling a cup begins to form. Do-hyuk is ecstatic seeing that the replication spell is actually working. The replication is completed successfully, and a new cup appears in his hand. He compared the new cup with the original and was pleased with the perfect result. He thinks about how his current replication skill as an awakened is superior to the one his player character possessed in the DNF game. In DNF, the replication skill is limited to low-rank items, whereas his awakened skill has no restriction on an item's level. Having tested the replication skill successfully, Do-hyuk decides to go on a treasure hunt, to which he is referring artifacts. Since 2000, the year in which the mass outbreaks occurred, various antiques and other old items began to absorb dimensional energy. These energy-imbued objects came to be known as artifacts. An artifact is assigned to one of 7 ranks, poor being the lowest, followed by normal, and deus being the highest, then legend. It is said that the price of rare objects can start at 10 billion won, about 7.5 million in US dollars. Many antique items became artifacts, however, there has not been one person able to appraise them. Inside a car, Do-hyuk is thinking about how lucky he is that he possesses the Identify skill, which is an appraisal spell he had frequently used in DNF. The driver tells him that they have arrived at his destination. Do-hyuk steps out of the car and stands in front of a store with one clear agenda in mind. He had arrived at the nearest antique shop. With a grin, he activates Identify and enters the store. 3 hours later inside the shop, Do-hyuk is holding a ring, not believing that such an item could exist. His appraisal spell identified it as the Ort Ring, a rare item that increases magic by 100, and increases wisdom by 10%. In addition, it restores the wearer's magic by 1 when casting a spell. He decides that it is time to leave and takes the ring and a few other items to the store counter. The store clerk comments on how early Do-hyuk woke up to go shopping. Do-hyuk responds saying that he thought he'd spend his day off doing what he loves, collecting antiques. As Do-hyuk leaves the store, his phone rings. He grunts when he sees it as his boss calling. He answers the call as he asks himself why he should still take orders from his boss. Screaming on the phone, His boss asks if he knows what time it is and why he isn't at the office. Do Hyuk tells him that he is no longer working for a company that disregards the safety of its employees. Appalled by Do Hyuk's response, his boss asks him if he no longer wants his paychecks and asks him if he thinks he can easily find another company that pays and treats its employees as well as they do. Do Hyuk became enraged by his boss's last statement regarding the treatment of employees. He curses at his boss, citing that the workloads are hell, that there are no holidays, and that they even work weekends. He tells his boss he quits and hangs up the phone. Do Hyuk begins walking and thinks about going home and selling the artifacts he had just bought. He turns his attention to two people shouting at each other across the street. A man had bumped into the other man's shoulder and lacked the courtesy to apologize. The other man is angry at the man because he refuses to apologize for a tap on the shoulder. The argument quickly escalates, and a crowd of people watching begins to form as the two men prepare to fight. The two men both happen to be awakened individuals. A woman suddenly jumps in between the two men right before they are about to strike each other. She grabs them by their arms and throws them to the sides, separating the two. The woman was Yunso Lee, the KMAA agent. She tells the two men that fighting amongst the awakened is against the rules and orders them to review the awakened code of conduct thoroughly. She decides to let the two men off the hook and warns them that next time, they will be arrested. People in the crowd begin to talk about her, saying how cool and beautiful she is. Someone recognizes her and mentions that she is a B-rank officer. Yunso Lee sees someone standing in middle of the crowd that caught her attention. She calls out to the person wearing a black tracksuit and carrying a heavy-looking plastic bag, and she then says his name, Do Hyuk Park. Do Hyuk reluctantly raises his hand to acknowledge her as he could feel the glares from jealous men around him. She tells Do Hyuk that he needs to pick up his lost belongings. At the KMAA office, Yunso Lee is preparing some coffee and apologizes to Do Hyuk that they only have instant coffee. He tells her that it's fine and then asks about his belongings. She places a briefcase on the table and tells him that he left it behind at the outbreak site yesterday. She lets him know that they searched his bag because they needed to identify its owner, and she apologizes for having done so. Do Hyuk tells her that it is not a problem and that it is understandable. Yunso Lee switches gear to discuss another subject. She tells Do Hyuk that based on the information they had gathered, they determined that the two guild members at the outbreak site could not have defeated the giant goblin yesterday, and says that she believes that it was Do Hyuk who killed it. Do Hyuk asks if that was the reason why she was looking for him and if the reason was to recruit him. Yunso Lee tells him that her goal wasn't to recruit him, but to inform him that he must register as an awakened because he is powerful. As Do Hyuk steps out of the chamber, the evaluations monitor informs him that his evaluations have completed. Yunso Lee tells Do Hyuk that he can sit and wait while she reviews his evaluation results. As Yunso reads the sheet of paper, she pauses and lets out a hum, to which Do Hyuk reacts nervously. He asks her if there is something wrong and if he did not meet the standards. She tells him that it was nothing and gives him his registration with the stamp of approval, showing him that he has passed. She then wishes him that his future as an awakened will go smoothly and with a smile, tells him to be sure he survives. Feeling a little uneasy by her last comment, Do Hyuk thanks her and leaves. The evaluations monitor asks Yunso why she was being so kind to someone who didn't have a lot of potential. She tells him that she is simply curious about him.